This is what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
We need to essentially sick technology on our forests in a way that would keep us safer and make it so that you can live your lives without having to worry about wildfires or rolling blackouts or PG&E and this nonsense. This is an emblem of what's gone wrong in the United States. Our government has failed, capitalism is failing us, and it's up to us to do better. This is the vision that we can take to the rest of the country as quickly as possible. And you all are in a very special place here in San Francisco because all of you have friends who ask you what the future is going to look like. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, well, you would know. And sometimes they ask you, it's like, hey, do you live in utopia or dystopia here in San Francisco? And you change your mind about that on the regular. You know what I mean? Like, you do something, you're like, oh, definitely utopia. Then you're like, oh, definitely dystopia. Like, same day. I get it. I've spent time here, too. I've lived here for months of the year for the last 6 or 7 years. You all see the future coming, and it is up to you to take the country in a better direction. Now, California is not used to this, but you're going to have a vital role in determining who the next president of the United States is. I think you're looking at him, San Francisco. We can compete and win right here in California, am I right? I get along with Kamala, but there was one poll that had me out-polling Kamala right here in California. Your voting got moved up. This is very, very new to you, California, because ordinarily by the time it comes to you, the nomination has been decided. So you don't really know what this is like. But this time, you got moved up to Super Tuesday. You're going to be the 5th state to vote and the whole thing. And this race will not be decided by state number 5. I can virtually guarantee you that. You're going to make your voice heard. Now, if you're not that into politics, let's try to do this. This will be fun. What's the first state to vote? Iowa. Iowa. Some of you were like, huh? Number 1 is Iowa. What's number 2? What's number 3? Nevada. I know, that's a tricky one. That'll get you every time. And what's number 4? And what's number 5? That's right. You're going to have your chance to make your voice heard. Early voting starts in California 1 month early. So you can actually vote the same time as Iowa. Are you guys gonna vote in February for the Yang Gang? Yeah, get your votes in early because people, those votes count just like anyone else's. And then you can bug your friends and say, hey, we've got a month to rack up the vote by the time March 3rd rolls around, Super Tuesday. Like, we could be up to hundreds of thousands of voters before the polls even open on March 3rd. What do you think? I'm heading to Iowa next week for something called Yang-a-Palooza. I don't know if you heard about this. And Weezer's coming out and playing a concert in Des Moines. So we're going to fight it out in Iowa. We're going to fight it out in New Hampshire. We're going to do great in Nevada. I just came from there, and man, the Nevadans love this. In part because Nevada is #1 in the entire country for the proportion of jobs that are going to get swallowed up by technology. If you think about the Nevada economy, the major employers, hospitality, gaming, retail, call centers, transportation, warehouse and fulfillment, it's the highest proportion of jobs in the country that are going to get blasted away by automation. And they know it. MGM just fired hundreds of workers and then brought in robot bartenders in their casinos. Now you boo, but we all know that the robot bartenders are pretty cool. The truth is that tourists kind of prefer them. They're like, hey, check out this robot bartender. And then they do a little video with themselves being like, check it out, it made me the drink. The robot bartenders cost about $250,000. So MGM looks up and says, $250,000. That will get me paid back in approximately, let's call it like 5-6 years. And they're like, done. Do you think MGM's going to be the last casino to make that move? No, because we live in a system where everything revolves around the bottom line of the almighty dollar. We are going to outperform in Nevada. We're going to do awesome in South Carolina, and then we're going to bring the football to you here in California. So this is new for you all, but you can make a massive difference in the course of our country's history. And as a matter of fact, the history of the entire species. Because if we take this vision, and I want you all to imagine it with me, the rest of the world right now is looking up being like, what the heck happened to the United States of America? Donald Trump, it's like a time warp. It's heading back in time. And I want you all to imagine in 2021 with President Andrew Yang, the rest of the world will be like, they turned that around in a hurry. That's right, Andrew Yang beats Donald Trump. If this is a game of rock, paper, scissors, Donald Trump is a pair of scissors and I am the fucking rock, San Francisco. And if you ask Democrats around the country, what's their #1 criteria for the nominee? Beat Donald Trump, that's right. And if you look at the numbers, you see that I am peeling off thousands of disaffected Trump voters. Republicans, libertarians, independents, as well as Democrats and progressives. I can build a much broader coalition to beat Donald Trump in 2020. Democrats around the country are thinking, who's going to beat Trump? Who's going to beat Trump? They have not figured out yet that Andrew Yang is going to beat Trump. But we're going to let them know, are we not, San Francisco? You can see it really clearly. The numbers are just going up and up to the right. And I want to walk through a little bit of why the polls do not actually measure our true strength as a movement. Raise your hand if you've been part of a political poll. Yeah, not many hands go up in this crowd. Most people that get polled get called on a landline. You shouldn't really boo landlines. I mean, it's not like, that's like booing like steam engines or something. What's a landline? This young person, exactly. So there are three things that have to happen for you to get polled. Number one, you have a landline. Number two, you're a registered Democrat, generally in one of the early states. And number three, you actually have to pick up that landline and have a conversation with a pollster. The Yang Gang and landlines don't really overlap that much. And many of the people that are supporting our campaign are not registered Democrats. I suspect that applies to some of the people here in this crowd today. So the polls, even though they're going up and up, they do not measure our true strength. We are much stronger than the polls suppose. We see it, we feel it. Whenever I go to the early states, people are like, wow, this is a much bigger crowd than they thought. And I was like, I'm done being surprised now. Like now, you know, we go and be like, I'm not surprised by anything anymore in this campaign. When America wakes up to the fact that I am as sure a bet as any candidate in the field, we're just going to get stronger and stronger and stronger and then change the course of history and shock the world come February. Donald Trump's our president in part because he got some of the problems right. He said he was going to make America great again. And then what did Hillary Clinton say in response? America is already great. You all remember that? And that was not the right answer. So she just shouted out, she said that the DNC backed Hillary, and it's true they did. There's a chance that Bernie Sanders could have been the nominee last time if the DNC had to kneecap the crap out of him. Like everyone here, I was thrilled to see Bernie Sanders so freaking strong and healthy at the last debate. His running for president, you actually hang out with the other candidates in the green rooms and at the fish fry and at the union halls. So we actually have like a bit of like a social circle going. I actually get text messages from some of the other candidates every once in a while. And I text them too. You know, we what do they say? She yelled out, can I be your VP? So the DNC did stick it to Bernie. I am now pals with some of the other candidates. We do have really fun, informal conversations. They haven't gotten around asking me to be my running mate just yet, but it's coming, am I right? But the DNC this time, they actually are trying to create as even a playing field as possible. It's one reason why, as long as we keep performing, we're going to make every single debate between now and when voting starts. I already made the November debate, and I am pumped up for it. And I'll say, too, I'm getting more and more comfortable up there. I hope you can feel it, Yang Gang. Because that first time, I made a mistake of thinking it was actually a debate. And then, what was I thinking indeed? But I am a fast learner. And now I know exactly what I need to do up there, and I'm going to perform every single time. But I can't do it without you all. I need you to commit to a few things. Number one, raise your hand if you know someone in Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, or South Carolina. Raise your hand. Think about it for a sec. If you know that person, I need you to email them or text them or call them and say, hey, have you heard about Andrew Yang? Even if it's someone you haven't talked to in a while. It's going to be sort of an odd conversation. You're going to call and be like, hey, long lost cousin. It's been a long time. I'm going to make small talk with you a little bit. I'm going to ask you about your family I've never met. And then I'm going to be like, hey, have you heard about Andrew Yang? So number one, I need to reach out to your long-lost cousins, friends, and relatives in one of the early states. Can you do that, San Francisco? Number two, I need you to keep doing what you've been doing, which is spread the message to other people throughout your networks and around the country, because people know that you are closest to the pulse of what will happen in the future than anyone else they know. And so if you send them, how many of you had this experience where you send someone an Andrew Yang video or something like that, and then they ignore it for a little while, but then they come back around days or even weeks later and are like, hey, I saw that Andrew Yang guy. Raise your hand if you had that experience. I need you to double down and keep doing that until you get all of your friends yanged. Can you do that for me, San Francisco? And the last thing I need you to do is to ride people and let them know that here in California, you all are going to decide who the next president of the United States is. And you can vote as early as the first week of February, and then we have an entire month to run up the score. So I know you have friends here in California that are not used to participating in either the political process or presidential elections. I need you to let them know that what you do in February and March can change the course of history for our country, for our world. We can build an economy that works for us. We can do what should have been done decades ago on climate change. We can start measuring our mental health as a key element of our country's progress. We can redefine our economy so that it revolves around our health and our values. But this will not be possible without all of you. I need your help, San Francisco. Let's do it. Let's make history together. Donald Trump's our president in part because he got some of the problems right. The issue is that his solutions were the opposite of what we need. His solutions were, we're going to build a wall, we're going to turn the clock back, we're going to bring the old jobs back. The country needs us to show a new path. We have to turn the clock forward. We have to accelerate our economy and society as quickly as possible for the 21st century.
Now with the blackouts here, what do you think the federal role should be, and what should be done about PG&E?
Well, if you look at the amount of economic damage being done by the blackouts, it would be measured in the billions. And so what you have to do is try and address the blackouts and make them unnecessary. So you have to go to the root of the problem. That's sort of the root of the problem. But you have to go to the actual brush that's in danger of becoming a wildfire and say, okay, if we're forcing these blackouts because we're afraid that this underbrush is going to burst into flames, then we need to actually clear the brush and get it to a point that the blackouts are no longer necessary. So to me, to the extent that we can have the National Guard or federal manpower come in and try and execute on that task under the direction of the U.S. Forest Service, that should be the direction. But we should be declaring a national emergency around it, because you can't have rolling blackouts in one of the most densely populated part of the country for days on end. That's an economic disaster, and the damage should be measured in the billions.
With the trade war with China, what is your thought on the trade war with China going on right now, and the current administration's approach? Tariffs.
The unfortunate part is I think the latest step, quote-unquote, forward was that they'd returned to a status quo that existed quite some time ago. It shows how misguided the trade war has been, where the victims have been businesses and producers on both sides, and that we haven't really advanced American goals in a way that we can justify the tariffs that have been going on for months. I was just in Iowa, and there are farmers there that have been devastated by the tariffs, despite the federal bailout of the farmers. So as president, I would look to resolve our issues with China without going for a zero-sum trade war that ends up hurting both economies.
Should robots pay taxes?
The companies that own the robots will pay taxes. That's actually the thesis of my campaign, is that right now, if you have artificial intelligence that generates billions, even trillions in new value, the American people are likely to see next to none of that, because the tech companies that are the big beneficiaries will not pay meaningful federal taxes. And so we're in a trap right now as a country where we're going to look around and wonder where the value went, when it's going to get soaked up by a smaller group of technology companies that are going to pay very little back into the public coffers. So that is one of the main ideas of my campaign, is we have to give Americans our fair share of the innovations of the 21st century economy. And if we do that, then we can share an incredible levels of new value. And I've been endorsed by many of the leaders in technology because they agree with me on this, where if we have a society where people feel like they're being left behind, that's bad for everyone. That's bad for innovators, it's bad for technologists. If everyone's actually excited about the 21st century economy, then we'll all be much better off.
Speaking of next week, you're having your Yangapalooza in Iowa.
Yeah, Yangapalooza. It's gonna be fun.
But how do you convince voters in Iowa that you're taking the state seriously when you haven't been there since September 28th, outside of having this, big campaign event, every once in a while?
I don't think that's right. I think I've been to Iowa in October. I spoke at an event there this month, so I don't believe that's right. And the folks in Iowa know that I've been coming there every month for a year and a half. So they know I take the state very seriously. They know I love them. And I think Yangapalooza is going to be a real show of strength for our campaign because we've already sold through all of the tickets that have been allocated to our campaign, and we're asking for more because we're already oversold. And what I hear is that's an unusual position for a campaign to be in a week out.